We're beginning the second stage of Acadia, the big picture. Things have dried, and we notice that we have a nice representation of distance here. Brighter, sharper colors in the foreground, softer, cooler colors in the background really helps us to create depth. And what I'm doing now is starting to add the pine trees, which are the darkest element of all. And in the drawing, I was drawing simple lines to create the pine trees, and those I can still see, and they help guide me in creating just the height of the pine tree and the spacing between the trees. So one thing I should mention here is it's a good idea when you're repeating any sort of element to look for variety. In the case of these trees, I'm trying to make them different heights and at different spacings. So some are closely spaced together, some have more distance. Human beings are really good at repeating things. By that I mean we kind of turn off our brain and stop thinking about what's interesting and just do what's easy. So in painting, though, we benefit by using variety. We create a richer painting and more energy. So with these trees, since they're such a prominent feature, it's really important to think about variety in this case. And I'm using the dark of the trees to give an even brighter feeling to those yellows and reds in the grass. They're starting to jump out, come towards us, which is what I was hoping for. And I'm going to continue to add this dark element into the trees. The colors that I'm using here are a mixture of cadmium yellow and neutral tint. It produces a really rich kind of deep green, which you find in evergreens. And I'm trying to think as a calligrapher might think, and using very few strokes to create these trees, and using one stroke for each bough, and it has a more powerful effect than trying to create it by many strokes. So I'm using a brush that has a flat edge and gives me that calligraphic feeling, and creating the pine trees in this manner. Now what you notice me doing is I'm carrying some of that same dark element into the underside of the grasses and into some of the cracks in those mid-ground rocks. By doing this, I'm extending that dark element and isolating some of the brighter patches that I want you to focus on. At the same time, I am softening some of the foreground darks so that there's a little smoother entrance into the painting. I felt at the time that this was stopping the eye too quickly, having all those fissures and rough, strong marks in the foreground. So I'm softening that, creating more feeling of a shadowed area and highlights on the tops of the rocks, with the intent of bringing your eye to that midground where the grass is. Why is this important? I think a center of interest is very helpful in understanding any painting. I think it gives you a place for the eye to rest and a focal point. It usually is portraying a very important part of the painting, and it relates, in that small area, it relates to things that are going on elsewhere in the painting. For example, the use of red or yellow, or sharp, brittle textures. And here's the finished piece, having dried, and you can see how that dark mass of pines pushes back, creates depth in the painting.